The Great Depression is often remembered in images of breadlines and dust-choked farms, but its deepest scars were invisible. In 1933, the U.S. suicide rate hit its highest point of the 20th century, a silent epidemic reflecting a loss of hope that numbers alone can't capture. This wasn't just about lost jobs or money, it was about losing the very meaning and security of life. Fathers, business owners, and ordinary people faced a crushing sense of failure and shame. For every person who took that final step, countless others lived with a similar weight, fighting private battles in a world that seemed to have abandoned them. The spike in suicides was a symptom of a society where the American dream had collapsed. The true cost of the Depression wasn't just economic, it was measured in broken families, lost dreams, and a national crisis of faith. This was not just an economic downturn, it was a spiritual crisis whose echoes still linger. What was the Great Depression? It's a question that echoes through history, a moment that changed the course of nations and the lives of millions. It was the most severe economic collapse in modern history, triggered by the 1929 stock market crash, Black Tuesday. In a single day, fortunes vanished and panic swept through the financial world. But the crash was only the beginning. The world economy ground to a halt, plunging millions into poverty and reshaping societies everywhere. Businesses shuttered, and hope seemed to disappear from city streets. As America faltered, shockwaves rippled across the globe, trade collapsed, and nations from Germany to Latin America suffered. No corner of the world was truly spared from the fallout. In the US by 1933, nearly half the banks had failed and unemployment soared to 25%. Savings were wiped out, and trust in the financial system was shattered. Factories stood silent, wages were slashed, and the optimism of the roaring 20s vanished overnight. Once bustling industrial centers became ghost towns. This was more than a recession. It was a total breakdown of the economic system. The very fabric of daily life was torn apart. The daily struggle for survival replaced dreams of prosperity. Families who once felt secure now faced hunger and uncertainty. The Depression forced people to question everything, about their country, their government, and their future. It was a time of doubt, but also of searching for answers. The world that emerged was forever changed by this decade of unraveling. New policies, new leaders, and new ideas would rise from the ashes. The Great Depression was a global catastrophe, not just an American one. Its effects were felt in every continent, in every home touched by economic hardship. It exposed how interconnected the world had become, and how fragile that connection was. International cooperation and competition would never be the same. The gears of progress didn't just slow, they stopped. Innovation and growth were replaced by stagnation and despair. The crisis tested the resilience of the human spirit. Communities came together, finding strength in solidarity and hope in small acts of kindness. It was a lesson in vulnerability and the limits of unchecked optimism. The world learned that prosperity could vanish in an instant. The scars it left would shape generations to come, reminding us of both the dangers of excess and the enduring power of hope. Today, it's easy to underestimate the true severity of the Great Depression. Iconic images of breadlines and soup kitchens have dulled our sense of shock. But the reality was far more brutal. A collapse of security that's hard to imagine now. There was no unemployment insurance, no social safety net, no guarantee your savings would survive a bank failure. A single stroke of bad luck could send a family from comfort to destitution in weeks. This was a free fall, with no bottom in sight for millions. The psychological toll was immense. Men and women stripped of dignity, forced to rely on charity if it existed at all. Children watched their parents' anxiety and felt hunger themselves. The Great Depression was a daily battle against despair, not just poverty. It was a world where the rules no longer applied, and hope was in short supply. The most immediate impact of the Depression was mass unemployment. Men and women lined up by the hundreds for a single job, only to be turned away. The loss of work meant the loss of identity and purpose. Hunger followed. Families stood in soup kitchen lines, scavenged for scraps, and ate wild plants to survive. Malnutrition, especially among children, became widespread. When rent or mortgages couldn't be paid, families were evicted, their belongings piled on sidewalks. Many ended up in shantytowns called Hoovervilles, or took to the rails, joining a vast army of homeless migrants. The numbers are staggering, but behind every statistic was a personal story of loss. Factory workers, clerks, and families sold cherished possessions just to eat. The daily grind of poverty and despair defined a generation. The richest nation on earth became a land of hunger and homelessness. The search for work became a journey with no destination. This was the relentless reality for millions. To truly understand the Great Depression, we must listen to the voices of those who endured it. Their memories, passed down through generations, offer a window into a world of hardship and hope. Families were pushed to the very brink. Fathers felt the weight of shame and failure. Some left in search of work or simply disappeared, while mothers became the anchors of their households, stretching every resource and comforting their children through uncertainty. Children lost their innocence far too soon, leaving school behind to help their families survive. Shining shoes on busy sidewalks, selling newspapers at dawn, or laboring long hours in sweatshops and factories. For many, the joys of childhood were replaced by the harsh realities of survival, as they stood in bread lines or searched for scraps to eat. Farmers faced their own crisis. Crop prices collapsed, debts mounted, and food rotted in fields while cities starved. The land itself seemed to turn against them, as dust storms swept away hope and livelihoods. These stories reveal quiet heroism, mothers making gravy soup to fill empty stomachs, teenagers riding the rails to send money home, and neighbors blocking farm auctions to save each other from ruin. The Depression was endured by ordinary people showing extraordinary resilience, finding strength in each other and refusing to give up. Their struggles and courage are the true story of this era, a testament to the human spirit's ability to persevere. Survival meant ingenuity, sacrifice, and community, people coming together to share what little they had and finding hope in unity. The Depression tested the limits of endurance, forcing people to walk miles for work or food, and to wait in endless lines for a chance at relief. It was a time when small acts of kindness, sharing bread, offering comfort, made all the difference in the world. These were not famous people, but their stories shaped a nation and left a legacy of perseverance. Their legacy is one of quiet strength, reminding us that even in the darkest times, ordinary people can do extraordinary things. For many Americans, the most devastating blow of the Great Depression was the sudden collapse of the banks. It was a moment that changed lives overnight, sending shockwaves through every community, large and small. People had trusted banks with their life savings, believing in a security that in the end proved heartbreakingly fragile. Generations of hard work and careful saving were placed in the hands of institutions that seemed unbreakable, until they weren't. When panic hit, bank runs swept the nation. People rushed to withdraw cash, desperate to salvage what they could, but the banks simply didn't have enough money on hand to meet the demand. When a bank failed, depositors lost everything. There was no federal insurance, no safety net, and no one to turn to for help. A lifetime of savings could vanish overnight, leaving families with nothing but uncertainty and fear for the future. The psychological impact was profound. Trust in the financial system was shattered, and a sense of security was replaced by anxiety and doubt. Many hid what little money they had under mattresses or in secret places at home, vowing never to trust banks again. The fear lingered for years, shaping how people handled money for generations. The collapse of trust was a wound that took decades to heal, leaving scars on families and communities alike. Bank failures rippled through the economy. Spending stopped, businesses closed, and credit dried up, making recovery seem impossible. The heart of the economy seized up, turning what might have been a recession into a full-blown depression that affected every aspect of daily life. The sign on a locked bank door became a symbol of ultimate betrayal, a reminder that even the most trusted institutions could fail. The loss was not just financial, it was a loss of faith in the future, a blow to the American spirit that would take years to recover from. The banking crisis deepened the nation's despair, leaving millions to wonder if stability and hope would ever return. While cities struggled, a different disaster struck the heartland. The Great Plains, overfarmed and stripped of native grasses, turned to dust when drought hit in the 1930s. The Dust Bowl sent black blizzards across the land, burying farms and homes and causing dust pneumonia. Crops failed, cattle died, and families lost land that had been theirs for generations. With nothing left, hundreds of thousands packed up and headed west, seeking hope in California. These Okies became refugees in their own country, facing suspicion and poverty in migrant camps. Their journey along Route 66 was a river of human misery. The Dust Bowl was a man-made disaster, amplified by nature's fury. It stripped people of their livelihoods and their dignity. Rural America was left searching for hope in a world that offered little. The rural crisis was a story of displacement and survival. The Great Depression left deep scars and transformed America. A generation learned caution, frugality, and the fear of sudden loss. The crisis forced a dramatic shift in the role of government. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal created a social safety net, Social Security, FDIC, and public works projects. These reforms didn't end the Depression, but they redefined the relationship between citizens and government. Globally, the Depression destabilized nations and fueled the rise of totalitarian regimes, setting the stage for World War II. It led to a retreat from globalism and the creation of new international institutions after the war. The Depression's legacy is a more compassionate, regulated society. Its lessons shaped American culture and policy for decades. The experience of failure and recovery became part of the national identity. The Great Depression may seem distant, but its lessons are timeless. It reminds us that prosperity is fragile and systems can fail overnight. Remembering this history is an act of empathy and a warning for the future. The stories of survival teach us about resilience, community, and dignity in hardship. The Depression showed the need for a social safety net and collective action. Debates about government's role and economic inequality are rooted in this era. History isn't just about the past, it shapes who we are. The Depression is a story of failure, survival, and rebirth. By remembering, we honor those who endured and gain wisdom for our own challenges. The past is our guide. Let's not forget its lessons.